British streets are turning into war zones and nobody's talking about it. Machete gangs are openly roaming neighborhoods across the UK right now. Over 1,000 attacks in London alone this year. 60% increase in just 2 years. Children can't play outside, families are terrified, and the violence is spreading fast. Your city could be next, and you need to know what's really happening before it's too late. Let's start by laying out the facts, because this situation is far too serious for speculation or sensationalism. Over the past 18 months, there has been a dramatic and unprecedented rise in machete-related crimes across the United Kingdom. We're not talking about isolated incidents or random acts of violence. We're talking about organized gangs who have made machetes their weapon of choice, using them to intimidate, to control territory, to settle disputes, and in the most tragic cases, to seriously injure or kill their victims. The statistics are absolutely staggering, and they paint a picture that should alarm every single person watching this video right now. According to data compiled from various police forces across England and Wales, machete attacks have increased by over 60% in just the last 2 years. Think about that number for a moment. A 60% increase in 2 years. That's not a gradual trend, that's an explosion of violence. In London alone, there were over 1,000 machete-related incidents reported in the last 12 months. But here's what makes it even more disturbing. Experts believe that the actual number is significantly higher because many victims are too afraid to report these crimes to the police. They fear retaliation from the gangs. They fear being labeled as snitches in their communities. And in some cases, they've simply lost faith that the police can or will do anything to protect them. The geography of this crisis is particularly alarming because it's not confined to one city or one region. Yes, London has seen some of the worst of it, with areas like Hackney, Newham, and Lambeth becoming hotspots for machete violence, but this is spreading rapidly to other major cities. Birmingham has reported a sharp increase in machete-related crimes. Manchester is dealing with gangs openly carrying these weapons in broad daylight. Liverpool, Leeds, Bristol, Nottingham, all of these cities are experiencing the same terrifying trend. And it's no longer just the urban centers. Smaller towns that once considered themselves immune to this kind of violence are now reporting incidents. The cancer is spreading, and it's spreading fast. Who are these gangs, and why have machetes become their weapon of choice? This is a crucial question because understanding the problem is the first step towards solving it. The gangs involved range from established organized crime groups to loosely affiliated youth gangs, many of them involved in the drug trade, territorial disputes, and various other criminal activities. The machete has become popular for several reasons that are as practical as they are terrifying. First, machetes are readily available and relatively cheap. You can purchase a machete legally in many hardware stores or online for as little as 20 or 30 pounds. They're marketed as gardening tools or camping equipment, which means there are fewer restrictions on their sale compared to other weapons. Second, machetes are incredibly intimidating. The psychological impact of seeing someone wielding a machete cannot be overstated. It's a large, visible weapon that immediately communicates a willingness to use extreme violence. For gangs trying to establish dominance or control territory, this intimidation factor is extremely valuable. Third, and this is particularly disturbing, machetes cause horrific injuries that send a message. The wounds inflicted by machete attacks are often severe, requiring extensive medical treatment, leaving permanent scars, and serving as a visible warning to others in the community about what happens when you cross these gangs. Let's talk about some specific incidents, because the abstract statistics don't fully convey the human horror of what's happening. In East London, just 3 months ago, a 17-year-old boy was attacked by a group of 5 gang members armed with machetes in the middle of the afternoon, just a few hundred meters from a primary school. Witnesses described seeing the attackers chase the victim down the street before surrounding him and attacking him with multiple machetes. The boy survived but suffered life-changing injuries, including severe cuts to his hands and arms as he tried to defend himself, and a deep wound to his back that narrowly missed his spine. The attackers fled the scene, and despite multiple witnesses, no arrests have been made. In Birmingham, a family restaurant was targeted by a machete gang in what police believe was a case of mistaken identity related to a drug debt. 4 men entered the restaurant during the dinner service, brandishing machetes and threatening staff and customers. They were looking for someone who wasn't even there. The terror experienced by the families eating dinner that evening, including young children who witnessed this violence, is something that will stay with them forever. Again, despite CCTV footage and witness statements, the perpetrators have not been caught. These are not isolated incidents. These types of attacks are happening weekly, sometimes daily in certain areas. And what makes it even more frustrating is the apparent inability or unwillingness of the authorities to get this situation under control. Let's be very clear about something. The police forces across the UK are under enormous pressure. They're dealing with budget cuts, staffing shortages, and an overwhelming workload. Many individual police officers are doing heroic work trying to keep communities safe, but at a systemic level, the response to this machete gang crisis has been inadequate, and that's putting it mildly. Part of the problem is the legal framework around machetes. As I mentioned earlier, machetes are legal to purchase and own in the UK because they're technically tools, not weapons. It only becomes illegal when you carry one in public without good reason, or when you use it to threaten or harm someone. But by that point, the damage is often already done. There have been calls for stricter controls on the sale of machetes, including age restrictions, licensing requirements, or even outright bans on certain types of bladed weapons. But these proposals have been slow to materialize into actual legislation, and even when laws are passed, enforcement remains a massive challenge. Another part of the problem is the catch and release culture that is developed in the UK criminal justice system. Even when police do arrest gang members found carrying machetes, the consequences are often minimal. First-time offenders might receive a caution or a suspended sentence. The courts are backlogged, prisons are overcrowded, and there's a general sense among criminals that the risk of serious punishment is low. This creates a perverse incentive structure where carrying a machete makes tactical sense for gang members because the potential benefits in terms of intimidation and control outweigh the relatively small risk of meaningful punishment. The impact on communities cannot be overstated. I've spoken with residents in affected areas and the stories are heartbreaking. Parents who won't let their children play outside anymore. Elderly people who are afraid to leave their homes after dark. Business owners who are considering closing up shop and moving away. There's a genuine sense that certain neighborhoods are being abandoned to the gangs, that the rule of law is breaking down, that the social contract between citizens and the state is fraying. This isn't just about crime statistics. This is about the fundamental question of whether people can feel safe in their own communities. What's particularly disturbing is how normalized this violence has become in certain areas. Young people growing up in these communities see machetes as just another part of street life. There are drill music videos openly showing gang members posing with machetes. Social media is full of images and videos glorifying this violence. A whole generation is being desensitized to extreme brutality, and that has implications that will echo for decades to come. When carrying a machete becomes normalized, when violence becomes the default way to resolve disputes, when fear becomes the dominant emotion in a community, we've crossed a line that's very difficult to come back from. So what can be done? This is the question that everyone wants answered, and unfortunately, there are no easy solutions. A comprehensive approach is needed that addresses multiple aspects of this problem simultaneously. First, we need much stricter controls on the sale and possession of machetes and similar bladed weapons. This means treating them more like the dangerous weapons they are, rather than as innocent gardening tools. Second, we need significantly enhanced penalties for carrying machetes in public and for using them in crimes. The current system is clearly not providing sufficient deterrent. Third, we need a massive increase in police resources dedicated specifically to tackling gang violence and weapon-enabled crime. But enforcement alone won't solve this problem. We also need to address the root causes that drive young people into gangs in the first place. This means investment in education, youth services, job training programs, mental health support, and community development. It means giving young people alternatives to gang life, reasons to hope for a better future, pathways out of poverty and desperation. It means rebuilding the social fabric in communities that have been neglected for far too long. These are long-term solutions that require sustained investment and political will, but without them, we're just treating symptoms rather than addressing the disease. We also need honest conversations about immigration, integration, and community cohesion. Some of the areas most affected by gang violence are those with rapid demographic changes, where different communities live side by side without meaningful integration, where young people feel disconnected from both their heritage culture and mainstream British society. This creates identity vacuums that gangs are all too happy to fill. Talking about these issues honestly, without descending into racism or xenophobia, but also without politically correct denial of reality, is absolutely essential. The role of social media companies also needs to be examined. These platforms are being used to glorify violence, to recruit gang members, to organize attacks, and to intimidate communities. Yet the tech companies have been remarkably slow to take responsibility for the content on their platforms. There needs to be much stronger regulation requiring these companies to actively police gang-related content and to cooperate fully with law enforcement investigations. What can you do as an individual? First, stay informed about what's happening in your area. Attend community meetings, talk to your neighbors, know what's going on in your streets. Second, report suspicious activity to the police. Yes, the response might not always be what you hope for, but creating a paper trail of incidents is important for building cases and justifying resource allocation. Third, support community organizations that are working with young people and trying to prevent gang recruitment. These grassroots efforts often make more difference than top-down government programs. Fourth, pressure your local politicians to take this issue seriously. Write to your MP, attend town halls, make noise about this problem until the people in power can no longer ignore it. The title of this video says your city could be next, and that's not hyperbole. The pattern we've seen is that gang violence spreads from core areas to surrounding neighborhoods and then to other cities and towns. Areas that feel safe today can become danger zones remarkably quickly. The time to act is now, before this crisis deepens further, before more lives are lost or ruined, before entire communities are lost to fear and violence.